Hello, this is Ugo Uche with Road to Resolutions. And in this video post, this is a follow-up to a blog I just typed up. So in this video post, I'm going to be talking about the pain of rejection, the pain of social rejection, so-called. And I just came across an article on the American Psychological Association written by Christine Weir. It's dated April 2012. And there is a statement below the title. The title is "The Pain of Social Rejection." The statement reads, "As far as the brain is concerned, a broken heart may not be so different from a broken arm." Um, there's some truth to this, but the first thing I want to talk about is that rejection is not painful, at least not the way we see it as. So, what makes rejection painful is our interpretation of rejection. If you are raised to believe that you must always be accepted by others or that it's bad for others to reject you, then naturally you're going to experience emotional pain whenever you experience rejection because you believe something bad and terrible is happening to you. One of the best statements I ever heard someone tell me was that I was not entitled to be liked. And to this day, I would say that that's a really good piece of advice that I took to heart because in the moment, it made so much sense. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to what we believe, and what we believe sets us up for success or failure in dealing with social rejection. So what I found with people who struggle with dealing with rejection is that they usually lack a healthy narrative regarding their sense of identity. Often the worse the person's fear of scars his or her sense of identity is. So what do I mean by sense of identity? A sense of identity can be described as a person's concept of what beliefs and values he or she adheres to, combined with his or her heritage or family history. I've also noticed that people who have a solid grasp of what their beliefs and values are have no issues accepting others' rejection of them. This is because if I accept myself unconditionally, which I do, a person's rejection of me has absolutely nothing to do with me. It has to do with their beliefs. So if they're given that love is free, if the person rejects me, it's a zero-sum game because I have nothing to gain from them because right off the cuff, they've decided that they want nothing to do with me. So me engaging with them, if I don't have to, would be an utter waste of my time. So um, people who don't have a solid grasp or understanding of what their beliefs and values are usually more likely to give into social pressure to conform to certain trends or fads. Because in the absence of a narrative that defines who you are as a person, and granted, narratives are adaptable, you know, and that means you come across new information that you believe can actually help in your growth as a person, and you adapt it into your current baseline of knowledge and beliefs and values about yourself. But people who have zero to little narrative, uh, those are the people that are usually more likely to give into social pressure or they try to catch on with certain trends and fads. The problem with social trends is that in order to fit into a group practicing whatever trend is popular, you have to conform to certain attributes that are usually out of your control. And oftentimes, I've noticed that these attributes are based on vanity. So if you find yourself struggling to deal with rejection, there's a high likelihood that you have bought into an artificial narrative created by some people, sometimes who did not have you in mind. You may have bought into this narrative because you admire the people who practice the narrative, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, in the absence of a solid sense of self, you find yourself dependent on others to define um, who you are as a person. And this is a setup. This is a setup for rejection. Because when you depend on other people to define who you are as a person, then it becomes an impossible feat. because the only one who can define and accept you unconditionally is you. This means that in the absence of self-acceptance is self-rejection, and your experiences of rejection from others will only serve as a reminder of your rejection of self. So when you don't have a narrative, if you're not questioning, or if you're not encouraged to question or define who you are as a person, what your purpose in life is, then you're trying to fit in. You're trying to find yourself in other people's groups. And if you're trying to fit in and a group says, no, you don't belong here, we don't accept you, that can be painful. That can be painful because you're operating on the belief that other people should accept and define who you are. So when we first come into this world, the first people we socialize with are our parents. Our parents are usually tasked with accepting us unconditionally, and so therefore they role model for us unconditional self-acceptance. So you can imagine there are a number of things that could go wrong with this process. The reality is that parents who don't have a strong and healthy sense of self have very little to teach and pass on to their children, in regards to the formation of a healthy identity. The mind cannot teach what it does not know. I've also noticed that, parents who don't have a solid sense of self, they're the biggest advocates for laws, rules, and regulations that make it next to impossible, or make it difficult for people who reject others in some way, shape, or form. So I hear stories about little leaguers. They participate in a tournament and everybody gets a trophy. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. So let me see. I'm reading from my blog post, and I'm talking about this. Adding my own. This is my post. I'm reading from it, and a little bit to it. Okay, so people who have been fortunate to have developed a healthy sense of identity in their younger years, their experiences of being rejected are not only few and far in between, but also not painful. The reason for this is because of the phenomenon that there is someone for everyone. Even when faced as a minority in certain environments, people who are genuinely accepting of themselves often will establish relationships with like-minded people. For clients who have had little experience in living out a healthy narrative, I usually will guide them through the formation of healthy narratives that embodies a dignified sense of identity, which I'm going to discuss in another post and in another video log. So, in essence, rejection in of itself is not painful. If I approach someone to make friends, or if I approach a group and the group shuns me, that's not a painful experience whatsoever. What makes it a painful experience is if I came in with the expectation that the group must accept me, that they must accept me for who they are, they must like me, they must make friends with me, by all means necessary. At that point in time, I have set myself up, for significant hurt and pain if my expectations, don't come to fruition. The best way to be resilient towards rejection is to accept yourself unconditionally. So, my take on unconditional self-acceptance is, if what I am doing has absolutely nothing to do with victimizing another human being, then my conscience is clean. I haven't done anything to you. My conscience is clean. How you feel about me, it's not of my concern. If I've done something to you, I don't intentionally go out of my way to harm others. If I've harmed someone, it's more than likely to be unintentional, and I will go above and beyond to make amends with the person, even if the person still doesn't accept me. So be it. So ultimately, our people who have experienced the pain of rejection, it's really a reminder of their poorly developed sense of identity, their poorly developed sense of self, which ultimately is a form of self-rejection. So that's it for now. I'm Ugo Uche with Road to Resolutions. You can learn more about me at road2resolutions.com. That's road, the number 2, resolutions, plural.com. And thank you for listening.